This is Basic Atari 8-bit podcast.
.6502 assembly language, it was just a dream come true for me. I mean, it was just so simple compared to the languages I was used to.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Frank Paris wrote Mathlib for Deep Blue Sea, a library of floating-point functions for use with the Deep Blue Sea programming language. Mathlib first appeared in the fall 1983 APX catalog, where it won second prize in the Systems/Telecommunications category. The Deep Blue Sea compiler was written by John Palevich, whom I previously interviewed. I'm going to read its entry from the APX catalog. Mathlib for Deep Blue Sea by Frank Paris, recommended for programmers familiar with Deep Blue Sea, written in assembly and Deep Blue Sea. Add floating point capability to your Deep Blue Sea compiler. Here's the latest addition to the APX family of Deep Blue Sea software. Mathlib is a whole library of math functions designed to expand your Deep Blue Sea compiler into the area of floating point calculations. Deep Blue Sea is filling the gap between basic and assembly languages, but it doesn't support floating point data types. Mathlib provides the full range of functions needed for Deep Blue Sea to perform floating point calculations. It operates on standard Atari floating point numbers and provides access to the functions in the Atari operating system floating point ROM. Among the 32 new functions Mathlib provides are ASCII floating point, integer floating point, and degree radians conversions, floating point addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and square roots, natural and base 10 logarithms and exponentiation, cosine, tangent, and arctangent trigonomic functions in radians or degrees. Mathlib's link files can be easily used like any other Deep Blue Sea link file, such as graphics.ccc. Demonstration programs provide unit testing of Mathlib's functions, examples of how they're used, and Mathlib's use in turtle graphics. The author invites written comments and questions. Review comments. Mathlib requires a familiarity with the C programming language in general and Deep Blue Sea in particular. The user manual provides detailed information about the subroutines and examples of their use. Requires Deep Blue Sea compiler, APX catalog number 20166. Optional, Atari macro assembler. Order information, it was available on diskette only, which required 48K of RAM, was $17.95, and was APX catalog number 20231. You can contact Frank at frankparis@comcast.net. He's interested in hearing from people who used Mathlib. This interview took place on May 27th, 2016.
I was in the Air Force, and I was what they called a ditty bopper, which copied the Russians and so forth, and all these communists, and from Morse code. And after I did my bit there in Crete, by the way, all that was totally top secret a few decades ago. But anyhow, they asked me, do you want to be a clerk typist or a computer programmer when I came back? And I had no interest in being a clerk typist, and I had no idea what a computer programmer was, so I opted for that. And that's how I got into computer programming in 1963. Spent 2 years doing that and absolutely loved it in the Air Force. So when I came out, I started at the University of Chicago, and to help work my way through to get my degree, I worked on at the computer center. And then when I came out, by then I had married, and my wife was pregnant, and we needed income. And so I didn't go to graduate school, but started as a computer programmer and was stuck in that job until 2009.
And you were programming what and for whom?
Oh my God, 100 different, the industry lays you off about every 5 years or so.
Sure.
And I was laid off about 5 times, principally because I was making too much money because I'd been too long in the business. But anyhow, I started out with 7094s, IBM 7094s and 1401s, and then got into IBM 360s and 370s, and then in the late 80s, that's when I exclusively started working on PCs. And I think I got my Atari. Oh, that's right. I was working in with PCs with the Atari long before I went to IBM PCs, because I got the Atari in 1980, and I just absolutely loved programming, and I was back then I was doing exclusively assembly language programming.
Mm-hmm. So why did you get the Atari? Was it just for personal use?
It was because I couldn't get enough of computers. The idea of being able to work 24 hours a day programming, 16 hours a day programming, was just ecstasy for me.
Sure.
And so I can do computing at home now too.
So did you get a 400 or an 800?
Well, I got both, because I got a 400 for my kids to play games and 800 for me to screw around with and program. And the 6502 assembly language, it was just a dream come true for me. I mean, it was just so simple compared to the languages I was used to. The IBM assembly languages were they were Baroque, and 6502 is just optimized to do what it was, do. And I just totally mastered the 6502 assembly language, and I thought of it in terms of macros that were in my brain, and so I could code 15, 20 lines a minute, because I was just thinking in terms of macros.
Mm-hmm.
I had to add two numbers, boom, 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 15 or 20 instructions came out. Nice. And I kind of forget what I was just playing around with algorithms and stuff like that, and then I started playing around with their graphics system, all in assembly language, and I said, it'd be really cool if I, and I was banging out these Taylor series, like 30 or 40 instructions in a minute.
So what kind of things were you doing in assembly? Was it anything that was released? Was it games or
no?
What kind of things?
It was about Mathlib. It all ended up in Mathlib because I wanted a high level access to the graphics language and the graphics screen, and so I created this Mathlib. And I was already, I had years of professional development and documentation. And this just allowed me to play with the work that I did, and so I had all this documentation for Mathlib and everything, and I says, wait a minute, they have a contest, so I could enter all this. So I entered it all, and I got second place for the systems, whatever it was called then.
Mm-hmm. Right.
About 1980, 1981, something like that. And at the same time, I was teaching my 10, 11-year-old kid through Atari Basic, and he did a backgammon interface, and anyhow, he became a computer programmer and has been a programmer now, for probably 25 years. So computers, family.
Nice. So tell me, did you just buy Deep Blue Sea through the APX catalog as a user, and then decide it needed the math library? How did you find that? Did you know John Palevich?
No, I didn't know anybody. I knew about Chris Crawford. Was that what his name or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I didn't. I forget the actual interface that the people interface I had with Atari at the time, but they had a facility for submitting your software for sale. They would sell it for you. And I happened to win the second place for the system software that year. I forget what year it was, in 1980, 1981.
The fall 1983 APX catalog.
It was 1983?
Yeah.
Wow, my son was 13 years old then. Oh, he's not as smart as I thought he was.
Now.
But he just mastered BASIC. He got started in programming even before I did. He was like 13 years old, and I was in my middle 20s or early 20s. Anyhow,
nice.
So I basically developed Mathlib as a tool for my own use, but it had a professional finish to it because I was a professional programmer, for 25 years up to that point. And that was just, it was just a toy for me. It was just fun,
I looked at the manual. Normally I try every program that I talk to the author of, and this one I didn't because I'm not a C programmer, but I read the manual or looked at it, and I felt there were so many just like crazy mathematical functions that it just looked like it might have been tricky to do on the Atari machine.
Well, it wasn't really tricky. You had to learn the graphics card. I remember that. It had its own graphics chip or something. I forget what it was called.
The Antic chip.
The Antic system, yeah. And it just all made sense to me. It was just all logical, and I didn't have any trouble at all comprehending this stuff. This was my bread and butter, and so so I basically created a macro language in my own brain to program this stuff in their assembly language, but I tested it in BASIC. So basically, I created a library that I could write programs in, graphics programs in, basically like screensavers and experimenting with moire patterns and stuff like that, which with the low resolution of the Atari screen was great for creating moire patterns, Get all kinds of colors that really weren't there.
Artifacting problem things.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in email that you did a screensaver sort of thing.
There should be a in that original package. I'm pretty sure that I included. There had to be an example program written using the library I developed, because otherwise it's just going to be Greek for these hackers, and so they could just use my basic code as examples of what you could do with my library. And the example program that I gave was a screensaver that you could parameterize so you can get different kinds of patterns coming out on your screen. And by the way, I bought the TV we used was by a brand new Japanese manufacturer called Samsung. Ever hear of them?
No. I wonder if whatever came of them.
Whatever became of them, yeah. Well, at the time, they were totally unknown, and now they're one of the biggest and highest quality manufacturer of LCD screens and so forth in the world. But that I just couldn't believe the high quality of this unknown little 13-inch TV that I bought, back in 1982 or so, probably. That's the display I used for the Atari.
Nice. So you submitted it to Atari Program Exchange. Did they have any? Do you remember they had any feedback for you? Did they have anything they wanted changed or fixed? Did they even understand what they were looking at?
They must have. They gave me the reward. They gave me the reward, right?
Right.
And they gave me the profits for about. They lasted for a year or two, probably 2 years.
Yeah. How much did you make good money from it?
No, a few $100s a year.
Yeah.
It was just like $10, $20 a week, a month.
Mm-hmm.
It just kept trickling in.
Yeah. Did you get any?
People were buying it, so there must have been a few people that used it.
Sure. Did you get any feedback from users? People
don't remember. I don't think so. since I kept getting sales, like somebody must have been at least, curious to find out what it was. I
Sure.
forget what the price was, $20 or something like that.
$17.95.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is like $50, in today's money.
It's $50 in today's money?
About that. So you won the second prize. Usually the deal with that was they gave you, the programmers a credit where they could get Atari hardware and software. Do you remember if that happened with you?
I don't remember what it was.
Mm.
It was either that or it's, a small honorarium like $50 or something like that.
Yeah. Cool.
I just don't remember that. I was probably keeping a diary then, but when we moved, I gave all my diaries to my daughter, so they're probably buried in her basement. I could probably look it up, all this stuff.
Nice.
When we moved, we had to downsize.
Sure, I get it. So did you do any other Atari projects, either published or unpublished, with this or outside of this?
I was fascinated with the Atari for a number of years, and I don't remember I was just probably playing around with it, developing algorithms, maybe getting ideas from my work, to try out different algorithms, and I could code so fast in the assembly language. It was just like coding in a high-level language, like C or something. Oh yeah, you asked me when I learned C. I started using C as a pseudo language. I don't know if you know what that means, but it's like a language you use to express algorithms in, but you can't really compile it. And so it's just a language for expressing your programming that you want, and that's what I was using. I was doing operating system development for Floating Point Systems. You know where that is, or was?
No, is that a company?
On Murray Road. You know where Murray is, right?
Murray Road in Portland?
Yeah.
Not really, but that's irrelevant.
West side over there, and I worked for them for about 7 years, and I was a section manager there. And about the time I was doing the Atari stuff, one of my programmers taught me C, and suggested that I use it as a software design language. So I wasn't really compiling my C code. I was using it as an algorithm, as a way of expressing algorithms. And then I would, after I, thought that they worked, I would translate them into assembly language. Mm-hmm. And I use the same technique for this all happened when I was doing my Atari programming. And I use the same technique for developing my Atari programs, which were written in Atari assembly language. I wrote all the algorithms up in the C language, and then line by line, I translated them to Atari assembly language.
Wow.
And I started programming C professionally then, probably around 1982. And by 1989. It wasn't until 1989 that I started programming in C professionally. But by 1992, it was all C++, and it was C++ until I retired in 2009. So that basically gives you my capsule description of my programming history.
Great, thank you. Do you think did you use the standard Atari assembler editor cartridge?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
And,
I've heard from many people that it was good, but the compiling was very, very slow.
Well, I didn't care about that. I was used to working with mainframes, of course, and I realized this is just a little tiny chip, so I'd start something going and I'd just go do something else until it was ready. Yeah. It didn't bother me at all.
What do you do today?
I retired, I'm 70, almost 74 now. I retired when I was 67. Actually, I was laid off because I was making too much money, and I had gray hair, and they don't like gray hairs walking around. And it's just un-American or something. And so what I do now is basically explore the intellectual life that I've had all my life, writing something. It's just a 300-page book.
Yeah.
But it's all like mythology and theology and philosophy and science all wrapped up together. And I've been working on it for about a year. It's like summarizing all my life ideas.
You still do any programming?
Nope. I gave that up. After I was finally kicked out of the industry, I did develop my own software for 3 years, tried to sell it, and just had I was a developer. I wasn't a marketeer at all, and so I have this beautiful program that I use for triaging my photography. By the way, photography is a big thing in my life. And I have this beautiful program for triaging photographs that I tried to sell. I still use it. I've been using it for 6 years now, but nobody else is in the world. I mean, a few people bought it, but so, I really don't do any program. Haven't done it. I just basically got discouraged and gave up programming completely.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm not.
Okay.
My life is richer now than it was before.
This podcast will be listened to by round about 1,000 people, and some of them probably used your Mathlib software. Some of them didn't.
I would be interested in hearing from anybody like that. That has used my software. Refresh my memory.
Excellent. Okay if I put your email address in the
Yeah.
so that they can reach you? All right. So if you could send them a message, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
Tell me how you used my software. I don't know. Or what did you do with the Atari? What kind of fun did you have with it? I used to play Missile Command all the time.
I played some Missile Command. My dad and I spent a lot of time in front of it. Played a lot of Mule, a lot of Jumpman. I did some basic programming, and never had the time really to learn assembly or action or anything, but I certainly wanted to. A lot of games, a little dabbling in basic and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And with me, it was my life obsession at the time. I really enjoyed the Atari. I loved it,
Yeah.
And it was actually more fun than when the PC came out, and all of a sudden it was my, it was my life work anyhow.
Well, I have what I need. This is great. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.